And that brings me back around to couples. I mean, you've been working with couples for many years now, and you've been having this conversation with them about consciousness, thought, and mind. And I'm wondering just what are the results of a couple having insight in your office, understanding that with you? What are the results of that?
Well, for one thing, well, people instantly become more present to each other when they become more present to themselves in their lives. So then they have access to common sense and wisdom. And much of the time, that's all they need, along with a little bit of coaching around listening, learning to listen for the feeling that another person is coming from so that you get out of your content and listening to your own feelings and really being able to let the other person in again the way you probably did when you met them. But when people start to have common sense and wisdom, problems that looked insurmountable, suddenly they have answers to. You know, like I'll have couples that come in and they're just like, well, we just don't have time to talk, and then they tell me the reasons. Well, that's all the ways their thinking is caught up in habits that keep them from connecting, that have developed possibly for years. But as I talk about the principles and people start to naturally start to back off from the thinking that gets them reactive or angry or judgmental, and just come back, come back, come back, all of a sudden there's a lot more space for common sense and wisdom, and they start to come up with their own solutions. And the thing or things that they told me they just couldn't figure out or solve, they start to figure out and solve. And then as they start to get back in a nice feeling with each other, that's very attractive. Whereas the thought habits of stress and worry and working on things not only get in the way of connection, but they're not attractive. We sort of put ourselves on hold or pause when people we love that are around us are doing that, because you can't connect with people when their minds are caught up like that. And sadly, a lot of people, start off, a lot of couples in love, well suited to each other, but then begin the habits that their parents had or that they came to the marriage with start to creep back in, after they've lived together for a while and the newness wears off. And then they start to feel alienated from each other simply because their minds are full all the time. And if they tend to, let's say, a person is a worrier, well, that erodes the quality of relationship. Or if somebody's super analytical, there's no room for love and connection within an analytic. Now, there's a place for analysis, and there's a place for considering things, not worrying. But the mind, again, will show us, will have a feeling when that time is up, so that we can let thought go and sort of put it in the hopper and have the space for the larger mind to synchronize what we've been thinking about and bring us a good idea. So, I find that there's really three key components I have found in counseling couples for, most of the 20 years that I've been doing this, but I've been specializing in it for the last 10. One is, first, of course, learning the principles, learning to be more present around each other, learning to back off from reactions and not communicate when you're emotionally upset, and listening. Really, really working to really noticing if when your partner talks to you, you're really listening for where they're coming from, the feeling behind their words. Those three things are usually enough, believe it or not, to get a struggling couple back in a healthy relationship. Now, you might have to coach them in those three things in various ways over a period of weeks or even months, but usually that's enough. And then as people become more, people usually want to learn more because the principles bring so many good things into your life, and people like to go deeper. And then as people go deeper, the more that of open space we have, the more presence we experience, the more we experience the deeper feelings in life: love, joy, creativity, connection, well-being. So then the quality of relationship really becomes beautiful, when people are living in those beautiful feelings and sharing them with each other.
It occurs to me as I'm listening to you that I can imagine a couple of saying, well, this has been going on for a really long time, our problems, and it can't be a quick fix. I wonder, what would you say about that in your experience? Is that always the case?
Well, if somebody said that to me, I probably would just ignore it
Mm-hmm.
because I know what they want is help.
Right.
So I would help them as best I could, and if it went quickly, they'd be happy about it.
Yeah, it's a funny thing about the principles work is once understanding of the principles happens, all of the how-to questions become irrelevant. It's something I'm really wondering how to do it. Well, I'll go Google it and look it up. And it's an interesting thing that the understanding, once it comes, sort of erases some of that other extra thought.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it does. It does. It's funny, it's really only recently that I've realized that it's important to teach people when you teach the principles, just about getting comfortable with being in the unknown. And people who were meditators before they came to the principles, they may understand a little bit about that, but many people just don't have a value on it, and an understanding that, and it that really changes when you learn the principles, because you start to experience that the more you're in the unknown, the more you start getting these high quality thoughts that not only bring you beautiful feelings, but they bring you great ideas. They make you much more productive, and you might come up with an idea for a book or a company or how to be a better parent, and it feels so good to get that flow of insights all the time. I mean, it's a positive addiction. And yeah, I find that it just gets better, and that's something that I've been learning lately. I have to actually explain that to people, because I think I was oriented that way a bit before learning the principles, because I was a meditator, but I still filled my head all the time when I wasn't meditating with unnecessary thinking. And the idea that you could walk around just kind of without a lot going on as a valuable psychological state is really kind of foreign to most people.
Valuable psychological state. That's a beautiful term that captures the experience of no thought
Yeah.
and walking around responding to what's happening.
In that state, you just become more effective because you're available for any idea that can arise in the moment that'll say, okay, now it's time to rest. Okay, well, now it's time to try to close that deal, because your mind's available for all of it.
Well, this has been great. What are you doing now with the principles with your work? Where are you going from here?
Well, I've started focusing on leadership, working more in organizations, doing trainings and seminars and coaching, and particularly working with women leaders, because I'm finding that a lot of women leaders are coming to me for the 4-day intensive. And because I have a vision of trying to get the principles out in the world in as big a way as possible. And so I created a new website a year ago, the optimalwomensleadership.com that you mentioned in the beginning, and the subtitle is Helping Women Help the World. Yeah, because I find that women, generally speaking, want to help our world. So do men, but I'm just focusing on women at the moment. And many women leaders want to help the world and benefit so much from the principles, because it creates that psychological freedom that so many of them are seeking, and it gives women leaders bedrock confidence in the decisions that they make. So I'm starting a year-long training for women leaders in the spring, and the first week of it is going to be in the French Alps.
Wow,
I know.
beautiful.
Middle of April. So it'll be skiing in the morning and training all day for 5 days. And then I will probably do a corresponding week here and I don't know yet whether I'll have a training in Europe and a training here, or combine them. But it'll be a year-long training, learning the principles, and then people can sign up for 3 years, where they then learn to mentor other women. And then the third year is to pick a community in the world that you want to help through your understanding of the principles. So it's a vision. I'm actually calling it the One World Women's Leadership Training.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Can you just say something about, you said the 4 day intensives. I know a lot of three principles facilitators use that format. Can you just say something about that for people who've never heard of it?
Well, yeah, I love to work in that format because it's the most effective way to teach the principles. People come and work with me for 4 days, and we'll do a session in the morning and a session in the afternoon. And the sessions kind of run as long as are needed. I teach people, as much as they can learn in every session. And then in between the sessions, you go off to your hotel and you have books by Sydney Banks to read, and DVDs to watch. And then you come back and you do another session. And what I find is that the 4 days are really enough time to give people a solid understanding in this, and to begin to break down any mental habits that are kind of habitual for them and get in their way. So it's the most effective way to do. And so I primarily work that way, and work on, I do a lot of Skype work with people around the world, and then a lot of people come here for the intensives.
Well, that's just phenomenal work that you're doing, Annika. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and to share this with the people who come onto my site, divineplay.com, and listen to what's happening. And if you want to get in touch with Annika, her website again is optimalwomensleadership.com. So please make a note of it. She's a phenomenal woman leader in our midst. And so I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.